Hi guys, how's it going, and welcome back to today's video. I recently asked you guys on Instagram what you'd like to see some more of, and you said you'd like to see some live client projects, some sort of project run through, which is exactly what we're going to do today. Today we're going to be looking at a little piece of album artwork that I've got to create for a client, sort of like an R&B pop style, and it's going to be featured on Spotify, iTunes, that sort of thing. So I'm going to run you through the project from start to finish and see where we end up. So if you are new around here, like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe for some more great design content. So some of the points to take into consideration is that she wants quite a minimal and clean aesthetic and layout with a small amount of clean type. I mean, that works for me, that's my style, that's probably why we want to work together, but it's definitely something to consider when sort of playing around with ideas. She's also providing me with some images which I'll pop up on screen now, what she wants to use within the design. So this is basically our starting point. What I need to do really is pick out what images I want to use, or what image in particular, and I also need to think later down the line how this can work in some Spotify animations, or if she wants something for her social media banner, that sort of thing. So I actually had some ideas already before filming this in terms of the aesthetic and sort of direction that I wanted to go down. So I'm going to pop up on screen now my mood board, which I put together from things I found online, Instagram, Pinterest, and just doing some market research at other artists that are in the same field, and taking into consideration a lot of the things that India said that she liked about this clean type, this sort of minimal photography aesthetic. I mean, a lot of it is just like strong portrait imagery, and it's just a lot of minimal, clean typography, very bold, very big. Yeah, a lot of them focus on the actual imagery. But I saw these sort of things, I don't know if they're official album covers or anything, I think they're posters that people have made from album covers. But I quite like that typography, and I quite like the sort of layout of that. The Harry Styles one here having a little bit more to it. So what I might do is try one route, very minimal and clean, simple type, that sort of thing, and then one that's a little bit more out there, where I'm sort of playing with the layout a bit more, maybe use multiple images to see where we go from there. So first thing we want to do is just dive into Photoshop and touch up these images a bit, make sure they're looking good and clean, remove any sort of imperfections, things in the background, any marks, blemishes, that sort of thing, and get the images looking nice. So the two images I'm deciding to run with, I think are probably going to be this one where she's sort of leant forward, hands on her face. It's a little bit more engaging, sort of draws you in a little bit more, and then this image where it's, she's nice, she's smiling, and it's sort of a good vibe. I think the other image, not in a horrible way, but the eyes look a bit dodgy. I think it's the lighting where you can't really see where her other eye is looking. So I want to avoid that, because I guess I could lighten up the eye a little bit, but I think these two images are stronger than the other one. So, and the other one's a little bit cold, a little bit standoffish, but I don't know if that's the right vibe. So I'm going to focus on these two, see which one works for our cover, or maybe use a mixture of two where I crop in on one image, or whatever. So basically what I want to do here, I'm going to sort of speed this process up for you and talk through as I do it, just save you guys a little bit of time. So the things I'm going to focus on removing and editing are the things like the marks on the ground, removing this like hatch on the window and on this window here, because I think it's a little bit jarring, trying to get rid of the reflection in the window, and these radiator covers are a little bit rank. What I'm going to think about now is those effects I looked at initially, where it sort of has this glow effect. It's a little bit of like a retro 80s, 90s film effect where it has a little bit of a haze. So I'm actually just going to go back to that original crop so I can apply the effect to the whole thing, just in case I want to change the crop later on down the line. So I'm going to go ahead and create a smart object from that layer, and then I'm going to create a duplicate, and then I'm going to filter, blur, and add a Gaussian blur over the top. Now with this, I want to blur it until about there, and then I can drop a little screen effect on it. Obviously this is way too blown out, so I need to drop that effect down a bit, maybe like 40%. And it adds a little bit more of this sort of glowy haze around the screen. And then I'm going to play with the colors a little bit. I think I'm going to play with the levels here, make the contrast a little bit more. If it was like a 90s, 80s film sort of vibe, contrast is normally a lot more. Darks are normally a lot darker. And one of the things I quite like about these film photos is a lot of these ones I had in my mood board had sort of this color wash going throughout them. So I think I'm going to try and do that by adding another gradient mask and changing this to maybe like a subtle pink or a red, and then drop the opacity down quite a lot, and then just adding a little bit more of that back in. I think that's too much maybe, but cool, I like that. And then what I'm also going to do is add another smart object, and I'm going to add a little bit of noise to it. Filter noise, add a little bit of grain. Again, I want one of these older film looking vibes, so I want a little bit more grain in there, a little bit grit. I don't want it to be as clean and as sharp, so drop that down to 10 like so. So if you zoom into one of these corners here, you can see a little bit of grain here now. especially in these darker areas, which looks good. And it's just definitely a more cleaned up image. You've got a bit of a haze on there compared to the original. You can see the colors here are so different to the colors on this one here. It's a lot brighter. One thing I do actually want to do is desaturate the carpet and the walls, because they're a bit yellowy. You know, these old Victorian houses in the UK always got a magnolia going on. Not necessarily the best, so maybe we can get rid of that. But it definitely looks a lot cleaner now overall compared to this one where there's a lot of different tones going on. This one is definitely cleaned up quite a bit. So another thing I'm going to do is just add in this texture graphic that I've got, that I grabbed from a stock website, just to add a little bit more dust and scratches in there, especially if this is going to be a film vibe. You're definitely going to get those scratches in there. Not quite as much as that, that's way too much, but I kind of want a few little speckles, a few little bits of dust. You can see here a few little marks and everything. So the image has now been edited, and I need to do the same thing on the other image, and then we'll have our starting point for our first cover design. So as you can see on screen now, here is the before and the after of the first picture that I'm going to be using and sort of playing around with for the design, and then here is the before and the after of the second image. I've applied the same effects onto both. Again, if I want to change this at any point, I can do, but this is sort of my base starting point for the design. So just before we go any further, I want to do a big shout out to today's sponsor, which is Skillshare. So for those of you who haven't heard about Skillshare before, it's an online learning community with thousands of good classes. So it's perfect if you want to learn a new skill or deepen your knowledge about something that you're passionate about and just get lost in creativity. It doesn't have to be strictly creative though. Recently I've been watching a few on how to make some new meals, get a little bit creative in the kitchen, something I needed to work on really. But I've also been watching this class called Productivity for Creators by Ali Abdul. So the class is all about being as efficient as possible and how you can sort of get a lot done in your free time while still managing to relax and still managing to do the things you want to do whilst having a successful side hustle, which is what I'm trying to do here. Very interesting to watch someone else's process and very helpful, so I can strongly recommend you go and check that out. The platform is curated specifically for learning and they're constantly adding new classes, so you can just see where the creativity takes you. They're also giving the first 1,000 people who use the link down below a free premium membership. Very good. Don't get a lot of free things these days, so snap it up while you can. Link down below, go check it out. And back to today's video. So now that we've got the images together and all edited, I'm actually going to go into Illustrator to do the text because I find it easier to work on text-based things in here. So in terms of a lockup, what India wanted was some nice clean text. The name of the song is called Be Mine. So this is what we've got to work with, and it is by India. Sure. So in terms of a lockup, I was thinking just some nice clean text. I was actually looking at champions, something a bit more playful, like so. So if we're thinking about our first image, where are we going to be placing this here? Is it going to be sat at the bottom? Problem is with this is the background is quite busy. If we had these as white, it can maybe be positioned in the window. Or actually another thing I was thinking is like maybe like a nice strong red color. That'd be pretty cool. I like this. It has like old school film, not film and photo, but like cinema film vibes. It's not really working for me. So the issue that I'm having with this image is I feel like it's just a little bit busy in the background to have, I mean, that could work. Have some strong type in there. It's going to just be too busy. It's going to be too much going on. So maybe I need to play around with the lockup a bit. I could split it, drop that. Could have some nice text down here. I kind of like the strong type, but it's not really working. I feel like the image and the text is clashing quite a bit. I might look at some other typefaces to use for this. So some other ones that are in there that I'm thinking along the same lines. Druck Super. Test both images. Something like this is starting to look cool. I think the red is really nice, or strong color blue. Maybe if we match the top actually. But what we need to work on is getting this lockup looking good. So again, we want some strong, simple type. I'm going to go ahead and just copy this out a few times and put in some alternative typefaces to use for this. Things that I know that already work. Nice and clean. Maybe it's a bold, wide knockout. Maybe something not as bold. Could go super sleek, super minimal. No, that's not working, is it? That's a bit weird. I feel like it needs to be bold because of the background being so busy, otherwise the text is going to get lost. Unless it sits in this window, but I kind of feel like that's a little bit weird to sit in the window. Oh, what if we had some like super condensed Be Mine? Could that work? Oh, that's quite cool. I don't really like the way it overlaps though. I kind of feel like it needs to be in the space. I can move the image around a bit, but I know it's all quite busy, so maybe I need to get the window out. That could work there. What I'm also going to do is actually edit this and then bring it back into Photoshop when I'm done and position it in the middle and add the grain and the overlay over the top again so that the text actually has that overlay and grain on it. Otherwise the text will just be really clean and the rest of the image will be all grainy. So we could do, this sort of vibe could work actually. Very fashion. I do quite like that. Could do one like this and then add like a little shadow behind so it should fit there. That could also go. I do think this would probably be the best one for this. If we just darken the image behind here a little bit so you could read the text was a little bit more legible because at the moment it's getting lost in that image. Could we have it big? No. So I think that's okay for one idea. If we could add a little shadow on that. Very simple, very minimal. But the next idea I want to do is sort of play around with the actual layout a little bit more. So I do kind of like this font, but I think what we need to do for this one is actually maybe have like a little section. I'm going to actually move this over. So I'm going to create another shape. Just get a nice thin border like so. Bring this up and do a very simple billboard vibe. You've got the shape of a Polaroid coming in there a little bit. You've also got a little bit more space. So if I was starting to think a little bit more of how I could actually lay this out. So there's a bit more text, a bit more going on. Could actually now start to make that a real pale pink colour. Might need to be lighter, you know. Certainly a bit different, but again, I'm not sure it kind of goes. Swatch like a nice green off there. So what I'm trying to think about is also not just the cover, but how this could work, again, across the assets. You're thinking about social media, you're thinking about banners, you're thinking about the little animation that goes on Spotify, and how these things would all work together. So I'm going to take this a little bit further on. Actually, I'm going to ungroup these like so. And my thinking around this is, can I create a little bit more of an edgy layout? Stretch over. Could the text be a lot more in your face? Like it's going on a lot more here. Once we get a bit more going on in there, add the textures in, I'm thinking this is going to be a vibe. Okay, so I'm going to play with this layout a little bit more. See, now I'm looking at this, I don't know if maybe this texture is a little bit too much, I guess because it's not actually on the rest of this and it's only on there. What I might do is just take this texture off and then apply it to the whole thing, because this is kind of now looking a little bit too different, but I think it's because this is so clean and this is a little bit more damaged and textured. So this is looking nice. I've matched this with the clothes. Don't think that one is for me. Let's get rid of that one. We can try some different color versions of this. I definitely think this one has the most potential. I think what I need to do is actually sort these images out a little bit, because this can go a bit smaller down here. This I think can also go a bit smaller. So I like this vibe. I like this vibe going on. I think it's quite an interesting little cover design, and I think once we add a little bit of grit and grain to it, this could be a vibe that could carry across all the other assets. It's a little bit more interesting, I think, than the standard minimal design that we've done here. And I tried out a few different color schemes, but I'm not sure they kind of work as well. I think this, I've kind of swatched some the lighter color from him in this image, like a lighter pink from here, and then the green again I've swatched from the top, so this sort of matches. I'm thinking a couple of little details here and here, maybe like just a couple of little symbols and stuff that you'd see on the record, but in terms of a layout, this is the sort of vibe I'm going with. It's super simple, super bold, but I think it's quite eye-catching and quite nice, and it has that old school vibe which I'm going with. I've been looking at a lot of old school garage records at the moment, and I feel like it kind of fits that aesthetic. Right, so I'm back in Photoshop and I've dropped in my designs along with my typography and reapplied the noise and the grain, sort of grain and dust effect over the top. I think it looks a lot better now. You can actually see it on the text rather than just on the image. I think with this one, I'm kind of failing that this kind of is a little bit too boring. So I had a bit of an idea in a similar way to what I did with the image, where I added this sort of hazy effect. I was thinking I could do something similar on my text. So for this, I'm just gonna duplicate that. So I've got one just on their own. And then I'm gonna go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur again, and give that a nice blur. Put this back on, a duplicate of that. What I want actually is just to get rid of this. So I've got that on its own layer, just the top one on its own layer as well. I can invert that. Cool, so I've got one of the main text and one with the blur. So I'm gonna overlap these two. So I've got the blur to be behind, and then the clean one on top. And what I'm gonna do is just grab the gradient tool from this, and I'm just gonna mask out the bottom of this so it kind of fades into a blur. So I'm gonna have that below like that. Pretty cool, save that. And when we go back to our original, it sort of blurs out at the bottom here, which I think is a lot more interesting. And the other stuff is quite clean here and here. So when you zoom out, this is a lot more interesting in terms of the typography than it was before. I mean, it was quite clean and minimal, but I kind of like this vibe a little bit more. It has that sort of weird blur like as you get on the edge of the frame. And overall, I think this is a lot more interesting than what it was before. We've obviously got our other design here, which is a lot more clean, and the layout is, yeah, very clean and bold, which is good. I like both of these designs. Again, I added this, a little color and a little bit of grain over the top. But if I pop up on the screen now, both the designs. So what India wanted is she wanted some clean, bold typography and a kind of an image focus. So I've gone with two different routes here. Again, this first one, as I just said, is very focused on the image. And then we've got this nice, interesting type in the middle with this film grain effect, which was, you know, along what we were looking at our mood boards. And then this second one, it has a lot more legs in terms of what we could do with it across the board, whether that be social bits or animations and that sort of thing. So this kind of has a bit more of an identity, but I think this other one is quite, you know, powerful as a cover on its own. So yeah, if I put them both up on screen together, which one do you like? Which one are you favouring? Obviously they're both going to go over. I'll let India decide which she likes or doesn't like, but which one are you guys favouring towards? Which would you like to see some more of? But overall, yeah, that's my two designs and my two routes that I'm going for this. But that is it for today's video. Hope you've enjoyed. Hope you have liked. If you have, drop the video a little thumbs up, leave a little comment down below, and subscribe if you're not already. And yeah, I'll catch you again soon with a new one. So thank you and goodbye.